Okay. Yours better. Thank you.
Hey, Patrick wants you to all turn your phones off. He asked me to make a lazy chicken.
Okay. I'm good. Good.
Observation 1 is inherently the first argument that Hegel increased MND a couple of days ago in response to North Korea. The second argument, this was not nearly enough. We only have 14 MND. He only increased it, and he only increased them by marginally, and this one happened until 2014. Third argument is we only have a limited number of bases, and they're all going to be based on the status quo. The bases are currently in California and Alaska, which means there's been a small decrease, but not enough, nearly to defend the east coast of the United States either. That's the plan. The United States federal government should substantially improve its ballistic missile defense capabilities by increasing its national ballistic missile defense on the continental United States borders by 100-fold. Funding enforcement through normal means. I repeat, the United States federal government should substantially improve its ballistic missile defense capabilities by increasing its national ballistic defense on the continental United States borders by 100-fold. Funding enforcement through normal means. Here's your copy. Observation 3 solves the first argument here is the MND. MNDs is a holdover from the Cold War, which embraces the realism logic, which is based on the idea that there's always going to be aggressors, even people you view as allies will constantly deter your argument. That increases U.S. hegemony because we feel the idea that we need to continue to exist in mortality. The second argument is the MND is good to stop offer U.S. preemptive measures and strikes because we don't interfere like China and Russia advancing against us because we can always act unilaterally, which means the MND is an act of U.S. hegemony. The third argument is MND increase military spending drastically because they have to build new infrastructure bases means we increase the military spending and ramp up the U.S. military and increase bases on the continental sites of the United States, which means we see more secure. The fourth argument is the MND. It performs great in the status quo. We actually see the January 13 test actually was rated highly successful. Hegel says that was one of the reasons why he increased MND in the status quo argument. That seems to indicate the technology's done better and will be swamped by the question that is bad. That's the advantage, which is no U.S. hegemony. Subpoint is the first argument is the U.S. hedges decreasing the status quo. The U.S. was not able to stop a chemical weapons launch in Syria. This happened literally a couple days ago. And it's a highlight because there is no intervention government in the United States, and we don't have the political will to try to back that or to back against it. We also kicked out bases in Kyrgyzstan. It's likelihood that we are losing base rights across the world, which means our power projections are becoming limited to the status quo. The second argument is the decline of U.S. hegemony has given way to a system of multipolarity. China has increased military spending by 200% since 2001, as well as the fact that China and Russia plans to match the United States military spending by 2020, as well as the fact that the example of Great Britain. Great Britain was a global power in the 19th and 20th century, but then they cut their navy and actually fell, and then losing the war to Germany and status quo. Not losing, but having deeply behind in the war, which is highly clear that there's not the ability no longer to power project when you cut your military. The third argument is there's a decline in U.S. hegemony, which is entirely self-imposed. Alan Kruger, the defense, estimated that the defense cuts fell by 22% last quarter. We'd also have the example that the Obama administration officials fear that there's no overstretch as the reason why we're not invading Syria, but this is not necessarily true. You actually have a larger military force we've had in previous generations. The highly clear that we're not overstretched. The problem instead is that they want to show a path of liberalism and diplomatic trade. The status quo, which is a highly misguided. The fourth argument is this shift to liberalism is self-imposed and a universally flawed one. Our argument that realism is inevitable in the status quo. We isolate the example that countries always look for their own interest and their ability to try to counterbalance other countries. We would isolate the example even when the United States is good at, even when multipolarity existed in World War I, there was still counterbalancing between Great Britain and Germany, which is the reason why countries tried to counter the other, which is the reason why the Ottoman Empire became an ally for ally in the war, which indicates a highly good that counterbalancing happens. The fifth argument that multipolarity causes some hegemonic ambiguity. That's because no one knows who the regional power is, which then causes conflicts to happen when we try to challenge the rising aggressor. Our argument that we don't know the power is that caused the war. That's the example of World War II, World War I, which we didn't know who the aggressor was between Great Britain and Germany, which caused them to try to constantly challenge each other and other rising groups to try to cause some kind of attack for them. The sixth argument is the constant security competition makes multipolarity inevitable and destroys diplomacy. We guys see the Korean War, which Crimean, thank you. Crimean War, which is actually a war that was fought between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Great Britain was not able to power project, would not have diplomatic ties to either because Germany didn't care about Great Britain because they aren't big enough, which is the reason why this war could happen, and it destroys diplomacy, which is the reason why there's constant security threats, because you can't deter the diplomacy anymore in the world. Multipolarity, people just ignore you because they don't fear your military might. The subpoint B is the impacts. The first argument that multipolarity makes Civil War inevitable. As in World War I, there was multitudes of powers competing continental Europe, and Great Britain had adopted a policy of realism. The problem was they had also decreased the military, so other countries didn't care that Great Britain was counterbalanced. Instead, they rose to challenge Great Britain, which led to one of the worst wars in human history. And get the high likelihood that just example, the lowest rate of conflict came from the last 15 years of U.S. unipolarity, and get the high likelihood that conflict is lower. This is from the book Better Angels on Nature, indicating that there was less conflict in the last 15 years, the last entirety of human history. And it's a high likelihood that we're ahead on this question. The second argument leads to transition wars. Our argument that multipolarity causes the regional powers to try to challenge the United States, will try to challenge each other. That leads to the rise of China and Russia, which both have military dominance and the ability to actually try to deter the United States conflict. the likelihood that transition is going to happen. We also have to these, or always risk extinction because no longer unified. There's no longer the nuclear umbrella of the United States. So you have to worry about instead. You have to worry about the other countries you can fear. You can first strike over Russia and China. Both have nuclear arsenals designed to domestic. Russia and China have fought border conflicts in a world of clarity. We would cite the example of the 1800s that Russia and China both fought a border war between each other, which is the Sino-Russian War, which would get the highlight of the transition wars in the inevitable world of multipolarity arguments with nuclear powers always retracts in a war because there is no longer good ties of diplomacy and you have to act aggressively in order to risk yourself being destroyed because the highlight could this could happen. The third argument, the collapse of Jimmy causes China and Russia to fill the void, which is worse than human rights. Both countries are rated as one of the worst countries for human rights in status quo. Human rights watch rates them both as the purple color of the indicator. That actually means is that they're actually behind the entirety of the West all about human rights. Additionally, they don't care the rest of free speech and don't give multiple other abilities for human rights to happen to you in case it's nuclear bad. Some points insolvency. The first term is successful U.S. military intervention as possible with the world of MND because we're allowed to power project arguments in fear of countries like China and Russia backlash against because we were able to deter all the nuclear threats and highly we able to intervene in countries like Syria and then power project, which means you don't have to worry about things like basic rights instead. We can just move into countries unilaterally and highly could we resolve this question our way. The second the plan is a major victory for the United States military and guarantees a realist policy because we're then able to counterbalance in a way that additionally looks at our U.S. interests instead of the question of how China and Russia could do to us. Our argument that allows for better counterbalancing and global domination in the world. The third argument, the plan increases the allowed for global dominance to increase the idea that the U.S. is undefeatable, which means which causes country to fall in line with the United States and the world. Indeed, the fourth argument, the unipolarity, and key to stopping global conflict with the United States and the able world of unipolarity. We actually have less conflict. That's the warrant I give you on the impact of page. You can cross-apply here. The fifth argument, the U.S. hedge is key to human rights and Malawi. The U.S. made a demand that the country step down in action. As he stepped down, he thinks the highly could be the ability to do it. Where unipolar, we don't have the stable democratic peace theory indicates that no two liberal democracies are going to war. It's highly could that we promote human rights. We decrease war. That's the sixth argument, the U.S. hedge keeps the diplomacy to the ability to have a strong military presence in order to make demands on other people, which you can highlight that we're actually ahead on this question as well to be able to make demands. I'll have to then enforce our edict of the diplomacy, which means that even if you comply to world without a world ahead, we can't guarantee that compliance is followed, which reach my head is critical following compliance with diplomacy. The seventh argument, the defense of liberals was a root and a flawed epistemology. This epistemology that the world is not inherently conflicted. The problem is that even in institutions like UN, it's impossible to know what the other person's thinking, which means there's always a constant security dilemma, which you don't know what the other person's actually going to move against you to solve the principal dilemma. We don't know if they're going to backtrack against your attack, which means the liberalism is inherently flawed.
Okay, cool. What's the order, guys?
It's going to be 2 off, in case.
Any of them long?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean,
I've
we're
got
begging
some
for
K
this one,
answers.
all right?
I'm not debating with Brent anymore.
Yeah, but we're still kind of begging for it. Come on.
I can't say hedges back.
This should be an interesting debate then. His head would actually explode like in scanners.
Do I need the inherency of case insolvency?
There's going to be arguments in front of that, so if you want to flow it up top there or just on advantage one.
I'll float up top, thanks, man. 1 second.
Yep. Yep. Whatever
Wait.
you want. There they are. Need 2 black ones.
Yeah, we're just one down.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you like. It's up
Feels
to you,
good.
guys.
First, going to be Chinese modernization. The ace point here is that Chinese weapon systems are unstable but undergoing improvements in status quo. The more years that China has progressed military substantial rapid pace, and they were able to develop advanced weapon systems without safeguards in order to prevent accidental destruction of short years. In particular, the Pentagon report 2 years ago under the PLA was onshore approaches in preventing individual commanders from launching weapons of extremely limited capacity to commit with their submarines at sea and extreme mitigation of the SSMBN fleet that performs strategic patrols with live nuclear warheads. Number 3 argument here is some form of this is inevitable. Just a question of focus. The DoD assessment last 3 years highlighted the transition away from the conventional prioritization towards specially enhanced tracking and precision control systems. The number 4 here's that, but China has annually that they intend to upgrade their nuclear arsenal, including their telecommunication systems and ICBM capability. The BISA point then is the plan halts development. The one here is if they are correct, the deterrence effective plan makes it not worthwhile in order to improve their systems because obviously the nuclear weapons wouldn't be any worthwhile. The return here's that China has incentivized to make submarines more secretive because the United States is able to know the launch code to be able to respond with ballistic missile defense means the lack of communication is the only way to make effective. That number 3 here's this constrains funds to new BMD to erode the parity and abandons the telecommunication efforts. These points impacts the 100 here's the U.S. policy in terms of 100 killer submarines is to have the United States submarine constantly ping the Chinese submariners. Obviously, without a command control system, they have no idea what is going on, which creates a user-to-loser calculus. They have to preemptively strike, otherwise they will be the ones who are responsible for losing the Chinese war. The next argument, though, is this would would trigger a global war because obviously the United States would have to respond to that, and kind of everybody blows up when multiple nuclear weapons are blown. The next is going to be the Hagel-Dissab.
On the point?
Yep.
Which nuclear subs are you talking about? You talking about the GIN Class 2 submarines?
I mean, yeah, all currently existing GINs as well as GINs in development.
Okay, good to know.
The ace of point here is that amidst some cuts, Hagel's been able to maintain funding for the Israel defense system in the war. In years, $500 million in cuts came into effect 2 weeks ago, were included mostly discretionary spending, but also mandated some furloughing for government employees. The number 2 years, the House was barely able to avoid the cuts to Israel defense on March 11th. They were only passed legislation by 11 votes. The number 3 argument here, sorry, 1 vote. The number 3 argument here was the defense provision part of the stopgap measure to keep the government operation from September 30th until the end of the year, but the part of the continuing resolution that can be amended to decrease spending for this. Number 4 years, these cuts are particularly broader, $46 billion in order to budget cuts for the defense. Number 5 years, there's literally no money left. This week, the U.S. Department of Defense announced that the new discretionary spending would be used on the missile defense on the West Coast, which exhausted all discretionary funds. The Beast point is the plan forced the U.S. to cut Israel. The 1 years, the plan cost a shitload of money. Think about this logically. If they increase it by 100-fold, the new West Coast defense costs $1 billion. That's at least $100 billion. Obviously, there's no money for that. The 2 years that Hagel and Congress doesn't have the capital in order to cut civilian or military spending because of the domestic pressure against that. The 3 years the Israel cuts were on the chopping block where they were targeted for initial cuts, but were pulled out. This guarantees they were put on the cease point. Here's the impact is war. The little one argument here is that the Hagel last week met with the Israel Defense Minister Barak, emphasized the U.S. needed to maintain relations with the United States on the military cuts in order to force Israel from a preemptive strike. Obviously, argument here is that when Israel views that the United States is not backing, they have to preemptively launch Iran because of their nuclear capacity, probably indicates the United States would be involved in. China, because of their allies, probably leads to the same scenario they talk about in terms of everybody goes boom on the BMD. They make arguments of how the ballistic missile defense is going to work. Argument is that it never works. First argument is there were 7 flight tests since 2004, and 5 of them failed. Probably a reason is why mathematically you wouldn't want to prefer this system. The next argument is the Defense Science Board report said that the radar is not supported for the interceptor, so even if we have really awesome missiles that would be able to get there fast enough, we don't have the targeting capacity in order to launch at a missile. The next argument is the National Research Council Clone Program said that chasing science is science fiction and emphasized flaws in architecture. The next argument is that even if it worked, we would assume an isolated target, which is discrete. They could just send up a bunch of junk and really cheap missiles and we wouldn't know which one is good, so it would still be the ability to work. They make arguments about how this would increase military spending and increase bases. I'm going to answer these arguments on Advantage 1. You can go there now. They are making arguments about hedges low and status quo, our arguments that hedges high and unsurpassable. No chance that anybody would be able to catch us. The first argument here is the United States is most mobile in terms of the installations, in terms of our naval capacity, because we have more aircraft carriers than the rest of the world, as well as our ability to have a deep water navy such as the submarines capacity. The number 2 argument, those are aircraft, is uniquely important because we have Generation 5 aircraft that fly faster and better than everybody else. Probably a reason is why they would not be able to close that gap. Even the Generation 5 are based off of old technology. When China is trying to catch up, they look at our old planes that shot down over Vietnam. Probably a reason is why they've never had the technological know-how in order to cap out. The number 2 argument, those that our technology is far superior, such as the radar and missile guidance systems, probably means that we are going to be ahead no matter what. The next argument, those in terms of our spending, we spend more than the other top 10 countries combined. Probably a reason is why even this would take a very long time in order to happen, and it's probably not going to happen because every time we still increase our missile defense, our ability to increase the military. The next argument, those that alliances against us are unlikely because we allow a diversity of allies in terms of all spheres and deploy missile defense abroad. This transitions away and reliance on unipolarity makes the collapse inevitable because of counterbalancing. We literally have to have allies. Our argument here is that when you have missile defense abroad and now you're spending over $100 billion domestically, you inevitably have to pull those systems back, which causes countries to turn against us. This was one of the primary fears of South Korea. Probably the reason is why we lose. Those alliances inevitably goes down. The next argument, those in turn, that generally will decrease when we intervene this way. They make arguments about how intervening in places like Syria would be good, but I think that we should remember places like Iraq and Afghanistan. When the United States intervened in this particular instance, it was probably a reason as to why it would decrease. The plan caused that type of intervention. The next is to turn that decreased projection because we have to focus on the domestic. They're spending over $100 billion on this domestic defense system, which inevitably means that we have to pull back some of our aircraft carriers and defense systems elsewhere. They are making arguments why deployment of these systems is good, probably changes that perception. And an next argument is that even if it doesn't lead to that, no, we're not going to have time. I'm sorry, is that the perception that the United States is focusing domestically probably means that we don't have these forward deployment mechanisms they want. The next is a turn based on the alliances you can cross-apply those arguments there. The next argument, those that Russia would never proliferate in order to attack the United States because of the political pressure not to engage the United States after the Cold War, and they don't have the economic capacity to keep up. No chance that Russia or China would have the ability in order to happen against it. And yeah, anything else there, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, GNI is a reflection of our capacity to increase military spending. No chance Russia and China would catch us on that, even if they do increase their military
Sure,
spending.
and the GNI is a reflection of the percentage and projection of U.S. output on military spending. Probably means that they wouldn't have the ability and
Gross
order to
national
do
income.
it. The next argument, though, is about the realism and inevitable arguments. That's fine. We are going for the link-turn arguments here about how this decreases hedge. The next argument is determining the perception that ballistic missile defense doesn't work. Probably means that we don't have the hegemonic capacity they want. Our argument here is that these systems do not work empirically, but even if that is not correct, the rest of the world laughs at these systems. That is why places like Turkey, when we said that we would withdraw our missile defense in order of concession to start, Russia laughed at us and said we don't give a crap because we know that those systems don't work at all. Probably reasons as to why that.
Keep going.
Why that doesn't happen. Our arguments that this would decrease hedge there as well. They also make arguments about adventurism is good to intervene. The solvency for this mechanism does not lead to adventurism like they are saying. No reason whatsoever is why focusing domestically would cause us to attack or lead to adventurism. Our arguments that they would still focus on the domestic sector, probably even more so than the status quo, so it would decrease that type of hegemony which they articulate as good. Anything else?
Go to their solvency page. Their only warrant for why BMD works is because Hegel said that they had a very successful last test. Let's remember that Hegel has an incentive to lie on this question. He was the original sponsor of the American
And
Missile
Hegel
Defense
was
Act.
the original sponsor of the bill that proposed ballistic missile defense, which probably means that he doesn't want to get political loss just after the probably reasons why we lie him over. I think you should prefer the specificity in what you know about ballistic missile defense, that it doesn't work, and all the tests were already where they knew where it was coming from and where it was going. Probably means that in a real situation there was no way that it would be able to work.
Okay, case in order. That's solvency advantage one straight down, followed by politics and China. Anyone need that repeated? Yeah. Give everyone a minute to get ready.
Politics in China.
Yep. Okay. Is everybody ready? Okay. On the solvency, group all the arguments about why NMD does not work. One argument I want to answer all of this is that two days ago, Hegel came out and said that all the flaws have not been fixed. You can say that Hegel's lying. A couple responses to that. One is absolutely no incentive for Hegel to lie. Additionally, he cited the Department of Defense. Own calculations indicates he's actually citing things that can be empirically proven. But the second argument is that the deficiencies in NMD that you talk about were due to a lack of NMD. It is something that can be made up by having more of it. All the fact about them not being able to target correctly and sometimes missing it will be made up for the fact that now we have like 1 million pieces of NMD. So if one misses the missile, then the next one will hit it. This will solve for all of your concerns. It'll get you to the bottom of this. You say that this is only assume an isolated targeted addition. You can extend that the Defense Department says that enough NMD would actually be able to solve it. You conceded all these arguments. Additionally, even if you win these arguments, we will still win that the perception of increased NMD and the perception that the U.S. is shifting back towards realism away from liberalism will solve the entirety of the affirmative. We do not even have to win the NMD works. Just an NMD forces a shift from liberalism to realism with the affirmative, which means that we get solvency. I need your timer. Sorry. Okay. Evangelon. Yeah, your question, sorry.
Yeah, you said he cites a DoD report and that's sufficient. What is Hegel the secretary of?
Yeah, all of your
I mean,
reports
there's
also have
scientists
incentives to
in it.
lie. If you're going to report to lie, yours could also lie because they're anti-MND.
Is this really the ICP argument? You can't trust scientists? All right, let's go to Evangelon.
You say that hedge zones are possible because of the things like aircraft carriers, the ones you can see the perception of the U.S. hedge decreasing actually means that these conflicts are happening. This is the reason why we give the first uniqueness argument, why Syria's launching chemical weapons and why Kyrgyzstan was able to kick us out of our military base indicates that this is absolutely not true. But the second argument is this is not your aircraft carrier analysis is flawed because new Chinese Song-class submarines can operate entirely independent of U.S. radar indicates that they can absolutely shoot down our aircraft carriers without us even knowing that they were the third. Arms would be the Chinese actually developing things like aircraft carriers and planes that can actually work with things like artificial general intelligence. Indicates that they would have aircraft carriers that can think independent of soldiers, which would be a reason why we are actually lacking in technology in terms of aircraft carriers nowadays. You say the tech is superior. The one argument is our uniqueness assumes it's because you conceded that we are rapidly decreasing our technology when they are rapidly increasing ours, and that they will catch us by 2020. Indicates that even if you win the tech is superior now, you will not let the hegemony sustainable in the long term. Only risk that the affirmative can solve this issue. You say that we spend more than the rest of the issue. You can extend the argument that this is changing, like the uniqueness subsumes this. I just made that argument above. An issue you say the alliances against the U.S. are unlikely that Syria, North Korea, Iran, all allied with countries like Russia and China in order to power project against the United States. They can support these rogue actors because we know that they know that we will do nothing to intervene and stop the conflicts. Indicates that this is empirically denied. Additionally, you say term plan will actually kill alliances, but you can see the multiple solvency arguments will answer this argument. The one is you can see that the number
5 argument that it says, the 4 arguments says that U.S. unipolarity is absolutely key to rallying alliances because everyone will want to also defense technology will want to be on the side of the team that's going to win the battle, which would be a reason why we will absolutely increase alliance with the second argument. You can see that this is absolutely non-unique because you can see that this is absolutely non-unique because countries are starting to move away from us and going towards China and Russia. That's our third impact argument, indicates that there's absolutely only risk that we'll be able to increase this. The third argument is the ultimate deterrence will slot backwards, meaning that even if we would lose alliances, we'll still be strong enough on our own to be able to defend against any other country. You should say that intervention kills hegemony, but later you make the argument that we don't increase intervention, so extend that here. That means that intervention will not kill hegemony because it won't happen. We don't need to win intervention to win solvency. Did you say that term plan will cause the pullback of aircraft carriers? The one is that we would absolutely, you can see that this will be a shift from liberalism to realism, which means we'll probably just increase aircraft carriers. Additionally, you can see that this will increase the perception that the U.S. is going to be more committed to the military in general, which would be a reason they actually think we'll move more aircraft carriers in there as opposed to decrease them. The third argument is that aircraft carriers become absolutely relevant in the world of NMT because even if they were to launch attacks against us, we would just use our ultimate defense in order to stop them. That indicates that aircraft carriers become absolutely obsolete in the world of perfect defense. That means that nobody would ever strike us in the first place. As you say that Russia would never attack the United States, that's not our story. We say that they will attack China in order to increase primacy. That's why we say that they went to war in 1969, indicates we only need to win that argument. As you say that GNI reflects the total support of military spending. I have no idea what this argument means, but I'm pretty sure that the argument, they don't really make it clear, but I'm pretty sure the argument that we are still decreasing hegemony and spending relative to the increase that China and Russia are doing, which means that they will still outpace us in technology in the world of the status quo. As you say that term perception, the perception that doesn't work will mean us more secure. The ones that every other country like North Korea, or rather South Korea, Japan, Israel are still calling for us to give them NMD because they think it works. It means there's absolutely no perception. But the second argument is that Russia's actually wanting an NMD not to be in Eastern Europe, which indicates they are absolutely afraid of us. A couple extensions. One is you can extend the multipolarity makes absolute more inevitable because multipolarity makes more inevitable because of hegemonic ambiguity. That means that all your scenarios of war are absolutely inevitable because countries will strike in order which they not think they're secure with the United States. Addition, you extend the number 3 impact which indicates our allies actually move towards Russia and China right now, which would be a reason why human rights is a conceded impact, which means that there's a close debate elsewhere, then we will be ahead on that. So let's go to politics. One is your bill is not even on the docket right now. The only bill currently listed, the defense appropriations bill, indicates there's absolutely no reason they would backlash against this bill, and in particular the second argument. The other issues will always trigger backlash before we build the ACE points that Congress is about to debate. Comprehensive immigration reform, which has 3 different bills in there, which indicates that the Republicans would just backlash against the Democratic bills, which are probably going to get through the status quo of peace points. They would just backlash on the Keystone Pipeline bill that is actually going to be debated within the next couple of days, which would be a reason why they would have so many faster backlash on. But the 3 arguments going to be nuclear bombs, political capital is far too low right now because it only has 45% approval rating, which is the fastest fall post-election, post-re-election ever, indicates he does not have the ability to rally troops to get this passed, to allow this to happen. 4 is not because Democrats are far too factual right now due to sequestration, because Mary Landrieu actually led a group of congressional Democrats to oppose Obama's proposal to offset sequestration cuts with an increase in taxes, which fractured the Democrats, indicates that they are not coalescing enough to make this happen. 5 is going to be 9 because Republicans will actually absolutely not build support because some Republicans are actually calling for decreased support for our allies because we're having to make so many domestic cuts to our own military. They think that we should prioritize our own military over prioritizing the military of others, indicates why they will absolutely do this. Next one is going to turn that plan will actually absolutely be key by able to increase Obama's political capital. This will show that he's going to be a strong leader, show his means of defense to be a reason why he will absolutely be able to rally the rest of the troops to his side. The next one is going to turn that plan will absolutely rally Republicans to his side because it will show that he's going to be committed to defense in the long term, which is the prime concern for Republican senators, which will be a reason why they will be far more likely. Additionally, the case will solve the entirety of the impact of the dis at the ACE points. We will solve for Israel. You can extend the arguments about we will rally our allies with the ACE points. We will solve for the conflict because no one wants to attack Israel because they think hegemony is so high that we will just attack them back and destroy them, would deter any risk of conflict advantage to. One is only because China's only deployed 2 GIM-class submarines to the status quo, and none of these, literally none of the GIM-class submarines have any nuclear weapon capabilities in the status quo. That is per the most recent U.S. intelligence reports indicates that there is no GIM-class submarines with nuclear weapons on them yet. They haven't even been developed. 2 is going to be turned. That will lead to a new kind of modernization which solves the dis because China will absolutely model the U.S. shift towards focusing on defense, which means that they will start focusing more on increasing their own defense as opposed to their offensive capabilities in order to keep up the United States. Indicates that this is all for you. Dis 3 is absolutely no impact because Chinese military has rigid controls over their generals. They would fear, generals would fear things like torture and punitive measures if they ever launch the rogue strike against the United States. Indicates that they would absolutely never do this. Force will return the NMD, will decrease missile launch risk because they will know that we will just be able to block it with the NMD, which indicates that no general has any incentive to even launch
launch a missile that they know will just stop the fires going to be turned, that diplomacy will solve the world in which we have more hegemony, you've conceded, that will allow us to move closer to countries like China, Russia, and leverage our diplomacy in order to get them to create more stringent safeguards to allow for this impact not to happen in the future. 6, when we turn the verb would cause China to be less offensive because it would hegemonic ambiguity would absolutely make this impact inevitable. When you don't know who the hegemon is, you don't know how they're acting, it's more likely that a rogue general could just go rogue and launch a super weapon. Indicates we will solve the internal link to this is absolutely inevitable. Only a risk that hedge can solve. 7, when we turn that in the case will increase allies to rally against China, which will allow them to know that if they ever did launch an attack, that we would always be able to beat them with our hegemony as well as the hegemony of our allies. The reason why there will never be an impact of this. 8 is no impact. Just China actually just changed their sub-general command. That they've actually increased safeguards, and then now the generals have to seek approval from the central government to actually launch any nuclear weapons. They have to call the government and ask, can I launch this nuclear weapon before they do this? This is a new provision, which means that there's absolutely no risk of you having an impact.
Okay. The order will be China mod. Then the order will be advantage. We'll talk about solvency, I guess. And then advantage 1. And then Hegel. Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay.
China mod extended the number 3 and the number 9 arguments first. The generals would never do this because they would fear retribution, and also because there's not an impact cause. They would be able to resolve all these issues. That is not interactive with any of your link terms. No reason why the resolution of hegemony would cause any of these things. You are extending defense here.
On scenario 1.
Your only answer is that your response is from a couple of days ago. That is not a response to the fact that the development has not been happening. More importantly, the affirmative is just a redeployment of existing BMD systems of this world. Probably an indication that you would not be able to project anyway. But more importantly, we will still win. You have also conceded, you have extended the argument that perception is an indication that people will back off. Probably a reason we would have a risk of a link to China, even if we were to go for it. But more importantly, it means that we can resolve all the other issues because it would be a new influx for spending. You guys are in trouble on the Hegel dissent, and you have no idea. You can extend the arguments that BMD doesn't work. Probably an indication that it would resolve a nuclear conflict in the future.
Add 1.
You're mishandling the GNI issue. Our argument is that GNI, which is the gross national income, is a good demonstration of the capacity of a state to increase its military power, even if you are correct that China and Russia would be able to overwhelm the United States in the future in terms of their actual military spending, and that they have plans to. That does not account for the perception of a threat on the part of the United States. That would necessarily spur an increase in the military capacity of the United States. Probably means hegemony is going to be inevitable, and more importantly, you are conceding a number of arguments that suggest that this would force an internal draw, and this is probably interactive with the link on the Hegel dissent because it suggests discretionary spending would be a problem. That means future deployment is going to be problematic in the future. We would definitely draw the aircraft carriers back in. More importantly, your argument is that allies are simply fleeing us. Let's be very clear. Pakistan and the other arguments, allies you listed, were not exactly strong allies of the United States. They have conflicting particular interests. You are also conceding the larger argument that we have broad strategic interests with European powers that rely on the United States for their support. Indication that would never back off. And liberalism probably resolves most of these issues because it creates a system where we can invade one another. More importantly, liberalism does not mean that we would be withdrawing our aircraft carriers from the status quo, because liberalism also assumes the provision of public goods that ensures that countries would want to be participating with the United States in a scenario where this happens. Ultimately, none of this matters, though. We will win a time frame debate in the future.
Extend the term that our enemies perceive this as bad hedge.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Russia laughed at us when we proposed this and started.
Yeah, you can extend the argument that Russia laughed when we proposed this and started, that it's a perception of bad hegemony, and even if it's true that it's an effective defensive measure, that does not mean that the United States is going to be able to be more active overseas. I don't think there's a particular reason why you should win that investment internally in defense spending for the United States means that we would actually project power more effectively. This is probably critical to resolving the small conflicts that that are isolated as coming the status quo as an indication as to why a retrenchment of the type that you suggest is going to be problematic. Also, you have conceded the argument. You have conceded the number two argument after the big wall on advantage 1 that the reason we didn't intervene in Syria is because of Iraq and Afghanistan. It would be a demonstration of the failure of American hegemony. There are decision calculi that go into effect when you try to think about intervention in a world where we are backing off primarily because we are concerned about chemical weapons. That's probably a reason we're okay. But most importantly, the status quo will always solve if there's a perceived threat from international power. We will increase those scenarios, and we are going to outweigh on probability, time frame, and perhaps magnitude. Also, more importantly, BMD only resolves nuclear threats directed at the United States. It does not mean that there would not be conventional warfare. In fact, if your arguments are true, it only means we would shift to models of warfare that have been historically utilized probably making your impacts inevitable. The threat of nuclear weapons sustains peace. Hegel. Oops. First argument on the overview is that literally none of your arguments on this sheet of paper are an answer to the petition. You have read generic politics answers indicating that Obama doesn't have political capital and he's trying to push a bill through now. This is not about that. You are just wrong. But we are going to make more substantive answers. None of your numbers apply. Our arguments assume a world where the United States is already dramatically increasing its spending on BMD. However, the United States has emptied its coffers to fund that, which means that there's absolutely nothing left. There's only a risk that we make defense cuts to the Israeli Iron Dome system, which means that we don't have any which means none of your generic offense applies, and even if your scenario is unpopular and expensive, there's not enough discretionary funding, and importantly, your plan is expensive, it's at least $100 billion, we isolate $247 million in the discretionary spending as critical. Okay. Line by line. You can group all of their generic politics answers, no political capital, that there's going to be backlash on some other issue. None of the thumpers are resolved by any of the arguments they made, and more importantly, extend the goddamn shell. We are spending there were $500 million in discretionary cuts as a result of sequestration. That implicates our ability to maintain the provision of aid to Israel for their own national military defense systems. The second argument is that the House barely passed that protection for the discretionary fund for the Iron Dome. It passed by one vote, which means that it is on the chopping block. Your argument that Israel is declining in popularity with some Republicans because of concerns over spending is our link argument. That argument can now be extended. Then you say, Democrats were fractured by sequestration. Again, not an argument. The funding has already been set up, but it's discretionary. You can't pull funding from elsewhere. All of that money would be diverted. This is an argument, the substance of which is conceded. Next, again, your sixth argument was no support. That's the link. Next, you say turn. Key plan is critical to political popularity. Doesn't interact with the disadvantage. The disadvantage is a question of spending and Hegel's ability to provide support for Israel defense. Then you say turn. We rally Republicans. Again, the scenario is totally insulated from any broader political capital argument that you make. The only really threatening argument on this page, and it's barely threatening, is that case would solve. This is irrelevant because you assume a long-term expansion of hegemony, but it also is not interactive with our internal link or impact arguments that say that right now, the primary reason Israel has not launched a preemptive strike on Iran is because of assurance that they will have local BMD systems. The plan can't solve this because it's on the continental United States. There are range restrictions, and Iran is super close to Israel. It would not be able to be responded to. Also, in the PMR, you don't get to say that there wouldn't be a nuclear war because the countries are too close together, because that's just nonsense. It would be new. Next. You make the argument that you would solve to be able to offense. That does not implicate our time frame at all. That says that absent an Iron Dome, there will be a conflict in the next couple of months because we constrain. That we are supplying all this material, and that Hegel met Barak. Ehud Barak explicitly guaranteed that there would not be a preemptive strike on the condition that we maintain the Iron Dome program. Concerns about the United States' willingness to be aggressive with Iran is only an indication that Israel would lash out if they perceived a loss of local defense. This creates ongoing crisis in the Middle East as millions of people die in a nuclear conflict. There's a new intifada launched in Israel as a result of their lash out at Iran, causes new cycles of terrorism, endless violence, and draws in the United States and every other world power because of the extensive number of resources in the region. You have conceded the link. You have conceded the internal link, and you have conceded the entirety of the impact as long as we can win that there's a risk that you don't solve for hegemony, and it wouldn't resolve the time frame question. This is devastating. Your impacts are inevitable. They happen before the impact to the affirmative would ever happen. Critical, one, because it is probably nice to live a little bit longer, I guess, if you enjoy the world. And second, because it jacks the focus for every other scenario in the debate. If a conflict breaks out in the Middle East as a result of an Israeli first strike because of the U.S. retrenchment of its support for Israel, then that means that the risk calculus for literally every major power on the globe changes. They have already committed forces to a resource-rich region in which they have numerous overlapping political ties, and they are fighting each other and probably killing each other before the BMD even goes online.
It's going to be the same order, which includes the Chinese modernization. Is everybody ready?
Actually, can you give the original order?
Sure. China mod, the case, and then the Hegel decision.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Everybody good?
Yep.
Look, I'm just going over China Mod to close doors because I literally have no idea what the PMR could do to win this debate. Extend the defensive claims that there is not an impact because people would never launch these weapons. They would fear punitive action, as well as the defensive claim that there are no nuclear submarines in the status quo, and they have already changed the command and control system. No chance that any of these turns interact. Go to the hedge, disad now, or advantage. I think that we are winning arguments that hegemony is inevitable. The GNI argument about our ability to increase our military power relative to other countries in the future is a projection about what our future GNI is about. Probably a reason as to why we solve all of the hegemony arguments, but also I want you to hold them to their solvency claims coming out of the 1AC and extended and the MG. Their arguments are about deployment and seeking U.S. hedge outside of the U.S. domestic context. We are winning arguments that this would decrease our ability to deploy arguments. The MG is extending arguments, well, we don't need to go for adventurism, but their solvency arguments are about the perception of the United States being able to interact in the international community. The plan text changes that to where we have to focus on the domestic context. They are also conceding the argument about how the world perceives a ballistic missile defense. Even if they are going to go for the defensive claims that it doesn't work, we're still winning the perception argument that our enemies don't think that it works. That is the most likely scenario for war. They have conceded the argument about Russia. If they are going to go for these arguments about how our allies like it, it is probably not even worthwhile because of the arguments about how the war scenario happens. The war scenario is all about counterbalancing with Russia and China. If those countries don't perceive it as a threat, it means that there's no chance that this would happen. Go to Hegel. Look, this debate is fairly simple. They read a block of politics answers that has nothing to do with our disad. This is about Hegel's decision to cut funding. It is not a political decision. It has nothing to do with elections, and there is not one argument made out of the MG about how Obama interacts with Hegel or how the political atmosphere interacts with Hegel. Hold the PMR to these MG answers. It's all about a bill is not on the docket. We do not need a bill for Hegel to make an internal DOE decision. There is not an answer to this entire disad. You can extend all of the uniqueness, which assumes theirs, that there is no more money, and if they spend $257 million, and they have conceded there would be over $100 billion, that they would cut the Israel defense argument. That means that Israel launches a preemptive strike. I think they're going to go hard in the PMR for these arguments about how the case solves that because it means that U.S. hedge will reign in Israel. Our arguments on this disad assume those arguments, that U.S. hedge can no longer protect Israel from Iran, so they have to lash out. However, I think Ben is doing good analysis in the MO about the time frame. The way that the case would solve would be over the long term, but the disad is about the immediacy of the plan text, which means that even if eventually they would be able to reign in Israel, the damage is already done because they launched nuclear weapons and it drew in the entire globe to a conflict that causes extinction. It sucks that they read the politics thumpers, but it doesn't apply. Moreover, I think that the probability of this outweighs any chance of the advantage. There is at least defense on the advantage that makes sense in the possibility of a turn. There is not any argument that interacts with the disad at all.
All right. Anyway, yeah. Load overview, solvency, band one, Hegel. Everyone ready? Ben and Ian talk real pretty about how we respond back to their shell, but we have counter-indicts that there are other things on the docket that they would backlash against, like the military appropriations bill. Your argument on your dissat is that's basically the question of loss of military funding. Huh. What other bill could you backlash to cut? Oh, on a military appropriations bill, you can totally block that one. And they don't respond to that in a second. That's probably devastating impact defense against the dissat. We are winning arguments on MND liked by our allies, and Russia doesn't like our MND, which is the reason why we power project. Both these arguments go drop in the debate round, which is a pretty devastating impact on how we increase diplomacy, and how our 1AC also is liked by our allies and not liked by Russia, which forces them to back down, which solves our advantage. Solvency of F. They go for these arguments that MND is bad, it doesn't exist in the status quo. We are winning a multitude of studies that say it exists in the status quo, as well as the fact that they say we don't create new MND. massively increasing MND in the world of life. It's probably a pretty good indication that there'd be new MND to what we increase it by 100-fold. That's a pretty intuitive argument. It's also new in the MOC, which gives me great latitude. Also, we make the argument's perception of our allies and our enemies of MND. That's math number 5 argument. The MOC is just extending through ink on those pieces of paper. That's pretty intuitive. We are telling you that our allies will feel more secure and people will flock to us, and that Russia will feel less secure and back down. That argument goes dropped. Advantage 1. Listen, I'm going to go this. The MOC goes a lot out of order. I'm trying to get this clean for you. Their argument is our allies don't like it, and that we don't lose alliances. Our arguments that countries like Syria and Iran move away from this. Their arguments are not exactly allies, but our argument that's pretty indicative of the fact that we are all currently losing people in the status quo, which are two Russia and China, which are forming alliances against us. That's an indicative of a world of multipolarity, which is a reason why literally this happened. Even if they're not good allies, they're still people who are joining the other side, which creates a coalition against the United States federal government. Their next argument is liberalism resolved. This is totally new in the MOC. We already argued how liberalism can never resolve the problem of realism, the problem of diplomacy, because you need a hardline stance and the ability to counterbalance other countries. That's in the 1AC, and you can extend across specifically where I tell you realism, liberalism is a flawed ideology because you have to have a hardline stance. Answer 100% of this argument. Next, they go for the argument in the LOR that they decrease perception. Doesn't really matter. Matt tells you that we are not arguing for intervention. That's the defensive argument we extend across to go against either our plan does increase intervention or arguments how we cause a realignment by our allies in the status quo via diplomacy causing them to come more towards us. That's a pretty intuitive argument how we would counterbalance Russia and China because we would create a coalition against them. That is Matt's argument actually how we resolve this crazy question by creating a coalition. You're about to I know this question. The next argument they go for is probably the best argument. Our game is the G&I debate, except Matt extends our uniqueness on advantage number 1, number 2 point, which specifically says that they are increasing the status quo, yet we haven't increased ourselves. That argument is intuitive. They are going to increase immediate by 2020. We've done shit. In fact, we've decreased it. That's the one I read in the 1AC, and they just extend across it. Probably indicts this argument. Next argument they go for. Perception. Our allies don't work it, Russia doesn't care. Extend across Matt's second argument to this, Russia doesn't care. This says, Russia wants us out of Eastern Europe with MND. That argument is made that specifically says Russia wants us out of Eastern Europe with MND. You can't drop that argument and go for this term. Additionally, by insisting that our allies love it, reason why they flock toward diplomacy. Our argument is diplomacy checks the international conflict. That argument is throughout the flow. We can also win the human rights arguments that U.S. leadership is critical to in increasing human rights. Even if there's a long time off, we're probably way more problem to politics instead. That would wax on the uniqueness level. Politics. Listen, they say the story doesn't matter. That's nonsensical. The LR tells you this is not a bill, but they also tell you the 1NC and 2NC that they voted on, so it's probably a bill. I want Matt's first argument. They don't respond to this. Matt's first argument is the bill's not on the docket. There's other things they backlash and roll to the 1AC. That's the defense appropriation bill. It's probably a intuitive thing to backlash against if they think spending is high, which is the reason why spending is really an issue. Which you say is it will not trigger an impact to your disadvantage because your disadvantage based on the question of zero-sum spending by the military government. That would be a reason why the defense and appropriations bill, which is on the docket, causes the backlash and would be the thing backlashed against, which means you have zero internal impact to your disadvantage. This is also probably indicted of 100% of their arguments. Next. I want the argument that Republicans want to decrease support for the Allies. They say that's their story. What? Our arguments, your bills are passing the status quo, man, because they are decreasing the support. That's Matt's number 5 argument that said they actually decreased the support of the Allies in the status quo. Our argument that Republicans moving away is a pretty indictive question. Their argument that they're unique in the story, but you still don't respond to the fact that there's still a risk that Republicans aren't going to pass it. If it only passed the House by 1 vote, the Senate is probably a much closer place to vote. We'd also have to deal that's probably indicative of the fact that this question is going our direction. On the Democrat fracture argument, they say Dems still pass. That doesn't make sense. We make clear the Democrats are fractured about how spending should go. It should be a reason why we're ahead. Yeah.
You need to go for these case solves the impact of the disallies. Really
Next. Their argument, their argument is the long-term off. Our argument that we cause immediate counterbalancing by our allies via diplomacy, probably to highlight we can actually counterbalance with countries like Israel, in the status quo guy, making them feel like the U.S. is more secure and more aggressive. Both these arguments are the diplomacy argument, how we resolve conflict with diplomacy from the one I see against the lie. Highlight that we resolve the impact of dissent. Listen, they can win the dissent, we resolve via diplomacy, as in the one I see, or they have to win a multitude of other things that will stop the bill from passing now, which they don't. Either way, we win our probability.
Good job, guys.
Congratulations, everybody, on making it this far into I just wanted to say before the RFD just how much I really appreciated judging you guys and debating you guys. I find all of you to be very respectable people and really, really like you all. At the end of the day, it ended up being a zero decision for the negative for Mckendree.
Good job, guys. Congratulations. Yeah, likewise. Good luck. Yeah. Good luck. Good luck.
I thought that the debate was really hard to resolve, but at the same time there was some, it came down a lot to specificity. So first, on the solvency, I think that you're winning, but it probably solves. I think you're also winning a large majority of your app. I think you're not extending the best defense on the media. I mean, I thought there was much better extension in terms of getting, like, I don't know, I think that the fifth generation Air Force, you know, our planes, different things. I think you could be spinning a much better story and try to hedge and say that we also have more things in development, which means despite what's happening right now because of the economy, we're going to kick back up real soon. You know, and just being a little more specific. I also thought you were a little unorganized on the case debate.
Yeah.
It made it a little bit difficult.
I was freestyling.
So then on the dis-ed, basically the whole thing comes down to the dis-ed because of the way it interacts with the case. So for me, on the uniqueness, it's real difficult to resolve this defense appropriations argument because it's sort of a he, they say, we say, you know, type debate in my mind. And I think that given the link specificity about the money and also the uniqueness argument about appropriations, that I end up giving it to them. And on the impact on counterbalancing, I think that it would fall apart in a world, even if you win the short-term counterbalance, in the impact of Israel, you know, attacking, I think it just messes all that up.
Okay.
But good debate.
I would say I'd be around very similarly. I think that, you know, yeah, your strategy for anticipating this dis-ad is obviously not probably specific enough. And the dis-ad interacts with your app in such a fashion that requires you to be able to do a lot of work in order to be able to spin an argument that is all in on basically the case solves the internal link to determine the impact argument. So, you know, issue specificity, not, you know, perhaps sophisticated enough engagement in terms of their link claims. I think that they, execution-wise, they've done a very good job of going for the dis-ad. I do think that perhaps if the way you go for your app is contextualized in a way that can answer the you know, the time frame questions that I think that negative elucidates, this debate is perhaps winnable, but the threshold of what it would have taken probably in order to do that kind of time frame arguments in terms of the ways of the interplay and the ways of which your case solves the internal link, that argument would have been pretty high. Yeah, for sure. So would have been a high degree of difficulty in being one, but yeah. Reducing the debate to that obviously is difficult given that you all had a fantastic debate. That was a sophisticated debate and you're all wonderful debaters, but yeah, I did. Just add. I feel bad about the I wish I could tell you more about the ways in which you should have compared your app in the context of their time frame claims, but it's fine. Yeah.
I think I'm obviously voting the same way they are. I think that this ad beats the case. I don't know how they feel on this, but I think the debate is very winnable for you in the PMR because your impact claims in the 1AC are very. Like, I think the beauty of an app like this is it's kind of like a policy app where you're going for all these laundry list of things. Hedge solves everything and solves it really, really well. And I think in the context of their dis-ad, the LOC impacts to the dis-ad are like 15 seconds.
Take my messages one or something.
Yeah. The LOC impacts to the dis-ad are like 15 seconds, and all of the expansion of how that actually turns your app and how this fucks everything up occurs in the MO. I think the beauty of your affirmative and the beauty of going for these kind of arguments about hegemony is that you can use the credibility that you have generated on Advantage 1 and the specificity of your arguments to beat back this disadvantage. I think that you can, all of these arguments are new about how the impact actually goes down, and Ben's making very smart arguments, but they're all new. I think that your PMR strategy was just not correct. I think I think you're winning all of your app. I don't think their defensive claims are particularly persuasive, and this GNI issue well indicted by your argument about the uniqueness claims. So I think then you just be like, well, all of this expansion is new. All I have to win is that the the freak out that it causes because an Israeli strike does not draw people in, does not cause massive impact, and so then all the DISAD is a regional conflict versus the risk of a large nuclear war. I still think that's very winnable. The other thing I would say is the GN, I think you could cross-apply the GNI argument that they're making to the Israeli flow in a world where their argument is that in a world where people are particularly, like a world where nation states are worried about their hedge and they think they're getting fucked, then they are going to spend more money to solve this thing. There is no reason that Israel wouldn't just spend this $247 million that we're giving them for the Iron Dome missile defense system instead of first striking Iran. I mean, I think this is arguably new, but there's this expansion of the GNI argument is also new. I think you have a lot of. The thing is, you're just focusing on the wrong part of the debate. Your app is powerful because the impacts are well fleshed out versus the 15 seconds of I don't know what the impact to the DISAD really is in the LOC. So you utilize the fact that you have that. And for y'all, I think you all need to be more careful with that because I think, I just don't, all I have is that this causes Israel to first strike and then you say the words boom and then move on. And you need to explicate what's going to happen to turn the affirmative. In a world where he just sits down and answers all of these arguments, I think that their half outweighs you.
Yeah, I actually I meant to jump in on that too. I'm not a big fan of the way the impacts are constructed at all, and my philosophy specifically indicts this. I want a real internal link, a real impact, not just because I was very with Will on that in terms of in the PMR I would have let you answer the entire impact.
Okay.
Because because it largely comes down to the way I let them turn the cases, this uniqueness shift in the world in which Israel attacks. So I think you get access to all those answers in the PMR.
It's difficult for me to assess how much latitude I would have given you on different parts of that, but I do think that you had more opportunity to respond than you seem to give yourself.
Great job, Will.
Okay. Thanks. Mckendree, good luck.